My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Well, today's Gospel is about as short as the Gospel can be, only 2 lines. Jesus went home, and once more such a crowd collected that they could not even have a meal. When his relatives heard of this, they set out to take charge of him, convinced he was out of his mind. There are only 2 lines, but they say so much, because in fact they're a summary of the clash between 2 very different, opposite really, ways of thinking about our whole lives. What we might call paradigms, kind of guiding principles. And the first paradigm, the one that Christ follows, is nicely summed up in the Second Vatican Council. And this short line, which in fact was probably the favourite line of Saint Pope John Paul II from the Second Vatican Council. So here's the line: man finds himself only by making himself a sincere gift to others. So that's it. And we might call that first paradigm the paradigm of gift. And, well, really it's saying we're kind of strange creatures, that we're made to give ourselves away. Think especially of the vocation to marriage, where, well, when a person's getting married, maybe especially the woman, they wrap themselves up and they literally say, here, I'm yours, I'm your gift, I'm a gift to you. Mutually, they both do that, of course. Also, the same happens in priesthood or other vocations to celibacy. Always, it's kind of similar, always giving myself away, no strings attached, completely. I'm a gift. The second paradigm is very different, and we might call it getting everything that we can without ending up, for example, in prison, but maximum success, pleasure, joy, holidays, money, all those kind of things that people would say, wow, he or she is very successful. What a very successful life. Doesn't mean that I won't share it or that I'm very greedy, but essentially I want to be a success. And we'd have to say that really is the dominant way that we think about our lives, that second paradigm. And in this short gospel, the 2 paradigms collide, kind of dramatically, in fact, because we see Jesus with his apostles really living according to the first paradigm. They're giving themselves away. In fact, so much that they don't even have time to eat. They're preaching, healing, consoling, and, well, they're so busy that very basic things like eating, in fact, are problematic, let alone other things that would be maybe another person might call kind of indices of success, so becoming very wealthy or this kind of thing. Well, Jesus is really, number one is for him giving himself away. Now, the relatives then, their paradigm 2, they come along and they think he's just simply off his rocker, mad. And even so much so that they think they have to rescue him. Maybe also the relatives, I don't know, you could imagine they thought, well, Jesus, this Jesus from Nazareth, he really was a very promising fellow, great talents and so on. He really could have been kind of somebody that Nazareth would have been very proud of. But here he is, wasting his talents away on others. And so they tried to rescue him, in inverted commas. Now, if I were a betting man, I would take bets that these 2 paradigms fight one another within you and within me. They're kind of at war with each other. And so, for example, with our vocation, whatever our vocation, we've found it so far, we might find ourselves asking ourselves, why do I do so much for this person? A husband or a wife might say, why do I do so much for this spouse? Or the kids, they really don't deserve so much from me. Or even that line from that band Coldplay, Sing It. And it's kind of true. They sing, I'm not going to sing it, don't worry. They say, nobody said it was easy. Nobody ever said it would be this hard. Because it is true, giving ourselves away is not easy. And it can be very hard. And at times we feel the cost. Maybe it might be easy to wrap ourselves up in a wedding ceremony and give ourselves away, and it's very nice and so on. But then, kind of that check is cashed, and it begins to weigh. And we didn't think it would be quite this hard. And then human logic, our own human logic, our paradigm reacts. And like the relatives in this short scene, that logic says, you are mad. What folly. Remember St. Paul, he says that Christ crucified was essentially Christ giving his life for us. That paradigm, the perfect paradigm, number one. He says, well, that for Jews is a stumbling block. They can't understand it. But to the Gentiles, it's folly. And folly is madness. So the Gentiles look at that self-giving, self-gift to others, giving ourselves to others so much that we don't have time to eat. The Gentiles just say, well, that is just mad. Today, in fact, is the feast of St. Agnes. And I suppose like any of the saints or martyrs, they are always examples of the first paradigm, because that's what every Christian is called to live out, the paradigm of gift. And she does it in a particularly kind of striking way, because according to tradition, Agnes was a member of the Roman nobility, born in the year 291, raised in a Christian family. She was very beautiful, so very eligible girl, and it turns out that lots of the young Roman pagan men were after her. And she had other ideas, in fact, though, because she'd given her life already completely to God. She had felt and followed a calling to give herself completely in a celibate vocation to God. And so she said to these young men who want to be suitors, she said, no, thank you. And they weren't impressed by this, in fact. And so they went and they did something very nasty, which was to betray her to the pagan authorities as a follower of Christianity, presumably knowing this would lead to her death. And so she was martyred, beheaded. And yet we love her so much in the church. She's always been really beloved of Catholics, and so much so that she, every time a priest says the Mass using the first Eucharistic prayer part, every time we mention her name, Agnes. So she's got a special place in the hearts of Catholics and other religions, in fact. So Jesus actually reassures us. He says, look, you won't lose, really, you won't lose out by seeming to lose everything. Remember, he says, whoever would save his life, paradigm 2, will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake, paradigm 1, will find it. So let's ask our Lord today in this time of prayer, help me to live like you, Lord, like Agnes, St. Agnes, giving myself, living according to that sometimes very difficult paradigm of self-gift, knowing that there's a great reward, a great happiness, not only in heaven, like Agnes, but also in this life. True joy is found by giving ourselves. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.